Good morning. Ayin Beis, volume 3. We're on page 1396. Top of 1396. And we're discussing bracha and heidah, which he compared to like Kodesh and Baruch and Kodesh, where bracha or Baruch is connected more to drawing in a revealed way, experiencing the divine that we relate to on our terms, the divine within existence. And heidah, like Kodesh, is acknowledging and experiencing something beyond our parameters. Is still experiencing it, but it's in a form of acknowledging of heidah, because we can't quite contain it. In bracha itself, or in the level of mamala kalam in itself, he explained the difference between Reuven and Shimon, which is Riyah and Shmiya. One is an experience where we literally, as if we're seeing it, perceiving something like as if we're seeing it with our own eyes. And there's a level of Shmiya where we can't perceive it with our own eyes, so it's something beyond us, but it's still comprehensible. We can understand it, as we discussed. And those are the two parshas in Krishma. The first parsha, Shema and V'Hafta, and the second, V'Hayim Shemaya Tishmu, Riyah and Shmiya. Ava Yehuda, hu b'chinas heidah. He said earlier, Shemin Esrei is Yehuda heidah, reading from the bottom of page 1395, and that's Atzmus Ein Sof she'ein shayach b'yediyah v'asaga klal. Here there's no relationship with understanding or comprehending, because Antu Chakim v'lei b'chachma, like he said a number of times earlier, beyond wisdom. L'hainu b'chinas bitl b'asaga, rak b'chinas heidah levad. So bitl b'asaga meaning not understanding, but the bitl within asaga, because it's beyond our comprehension, only in a form of acknowledgement. B'hainu. And he said, what does that mean? It's not completely removed from yediyah, but it's yediyah sashlila, which means we don't understand it directly, we understand it by extrapolating, which clearly is more than just the extrapolation of Shmiya. Shmiya is still in the world of comprehension. However, you can't visualize it. It's not as empirical and clear to the eye, to the mind, to the eye of the mind, I should say. Only negiya b'seichel, because there's some, like he said before, hashara, there's some estimation, there's some, what he called before hashara, or hakorah, some recognition. So heidah clearly could be completely beyond any recognition. Here there's a recognition that is somewhat the mind recognizes, but it's primarily, like he says, be'ikir, be'etzem u'b'chinas heidah. Earlier he said the word be'ikir, heidah. On be'ikir u'b'chinas heidah, in the paragraph at the end of the last page, the paragraph on top. Here he's saying be'etzem u'b'chinas heidah, which means shezehu u'b'chinas bitl be'yeser. It's an increased state of nullification, of suspending, the expression I like to define it, that he gets absorbed and nullified within it, in other words, losing his entire being. The more you understand, the more it's on your terms, which isn't a bad thing on its own. When I say not bad, it's an important thing when you're talking about internalizing. But this has the advantage that you are losing yourself in the experience, so it's far more of a divine experience, and you are being lifted and absorbed into it. Like the difference that I've often explained, when you stand in front of something and you understand it, so you're internalizing it. If you're standing in awe or you're completely absorbed by it, it is internalizing you in a way. Like, I mean, we say sometimes in Chachma and Bina, that Bina says, I understand, Chachma says the idea is understood, or the idea takes you, or you take the idea. I mean, that's on a lower level, I bet, because that's already Chachma. But here we're talking this level of bitl batzmuse. And why is that? V'hu mishum shalei tuchel nafshe says gam b'meiche. The Kolsh can believe it, because his spirit cannot tolerate, cannot contain this. Even also in his mind, and definitely in his heart. Before we were learning about how both the moyach and the lev internalized experience, Here, not in the moyach, and for sure not in the heart, because the emotions are, of course, even harder to experience. The mind, you could say, at least can imagine, can think, a thought experiment. You can travel to places that are beyond you, but the emotions is completely about your feelings. So it's definitely more difficult when you're dealing with something that is beyond even the mind, for sure, from the emotions. The mishum zeh whom is bat legamim commensurate. And when I say emotions, we mean the subjective emotions. And because of that, mizbat legami, it completely gets nullified or absorbed, or from his entire being existence, which is, when it comes to asaga or hargosha, mind and heart, is mitziyuse. Here we're talking about his mitziyus is being absorbed in this higher experience. Farihu. And this is a level that's far higher than bracha. Why? Makif. So the rak we can translate two ways: that it's only in a form of makif, even though it's higher, or you could say only in a good way, in a positive way. That it's higher. That's why it's in a form of makif. Well, bracha is gili, and bracha is in a form of gili. So the makif means it's not internalized. On the other hand, it's a far higher level. Like we've been learning earlier, the difference between bria and yetzira, which we're going to get to now. And this is where we stopped. Okay, so let's continue reading. Now, just for structural purposes, it all began in Aveda on page 1392. We're already now in 1396, 4 pages back. He said the Aveda of the difference between Bria and Yetzira, where Bria is higher, but it's concealed. Yetzira is lower, but it's revealed, which has an advantage of revelation, which that's the Ikra Kavona. Tachlis HaKavona is to reveal. He said of Aveda, that's the Serafim Shebe'elam HaBria. I'm reading the first line of the paragraph, page 1392. Because that's the context. The Srafim are in the world of Bria, they say Kodesh, and the Chayes HaKodesh, a next level of angels that are called the Chayes HaKodesh, the holy energies, Shabi Yetzira, they say Baruch. Kodesh Baruch is Sevav Kalam Malakalam, and that's Keser and Chochmah. So the discussion till now has been about Keser and Chochmah, about Ishtalshlus and higher than Ishtalshlus, Mamala and Sevav. But he hasn't spoken about Bria and Yetzira. All this has been an elaboration on these two levels, and now he's going to go back to the difference between the Seraphim, the fiery angels that say Kodesh, which is God has removed the level of Sevav Kalman, Kodesh, like Haidah, and the level of the Chayes HaKodesh, and that's the Bria, and the level of the Chayes HaKodesh that say Baruch, revealed like Yetzer Oyer in Yetzira. Now he's going to go back to that. So this, what we're reading, is a continuation from the beginning on top of page 1392. Which you can then argue that maybe this should be a new paragraph even, being that it's been 4 pages. But as I said, the publisher added these paragraphs, so they're not etched in stone. Either way, it depends. I'm sure when they do the new edition, there they've been adding a lot of paragraph breaks, many more than were there before. So it could be they'll do it there, but we'll see. So we're talking now line number 6 lines from the top of 1396, and the pages can be found at ayinbeis.com. And now that we've explained what these two levels are, this is also the inyan of Kodesh and Baruch, of the Seraphim, respectively, of the angels called the Seraphim, the fiery ones, and the Chayes HaKodesh. Now, Chayes can mean animals, Chayes can mean energy. In this context, it's the name of angels. There's 3 general categories of angels: Seraphim in the world of Bria, Chayes or Chayes HaKodesh in the world of Yetzira, and Eifanim, which means spheres or circles or wheels, in the world of Asiya. Here here the focus is on Bria, Yetzira, Srafim, and Chayis. And it says the Srafim say Kodesh, and the Chayis say Baruch. The Kodesh, hu b'chinas Keser. As we've learned, Kodesh is removed from Ishtalshalos. What is that? The level of Keser. Even Arich, we said, in it radiates Atik. Like you said at the bottom of, on the bottom, where was it? The bottom of, the bottom of page 1394, he said it, if I recall correctly. Or was it 1393? Let me see. No, on top of 1394, sorry. So Keser is Kodesh, as we've learned. That's higher than comprehension, than consciousness of Chachma, which is Reishis Sagili, the beginning of the revelation of consciousness. Kanal. Kanis Galil. Kanis Barlil. So that's the level of Kodesh. Vagam Shemavur Bakam Makemis. And though it's explained in a number of places, the Srafim She'emrim Kodesh Hainu Shemasigim Ek She'erin Sef Kodesh Umuvdol. So now you're associating the Srafim who say Kodesh because they sense Keser, which is higher than Asaga, but isn't it explained elsewhere? Hagam is a qualification. And though it's explained elsewhere that they understand it, the Srafim Masigim, they comprehend how the infinite divine light is Kodesh Umuvdol, is holy and removed and beyond. That's called Hasaga in other places. So he says, Hine Hasaga b'ze'enu b'chinas Hasaga mamish, canal. That Hasaga that is explained about the Srafim is not Hasaga mamish. Remember, we use mamish. Mamish means actually understanding. It's not an actual understanding. Canal. Shesham rak b'chinas Hasaga sashlila. So there is Hasaga, but it's Hasaga sashlila. It's extrapolating. Hasaga sashlila means you negate, like by saying, I know that it's not defined by these and these terms, so I negate it's not defined by this, and that helps us get some inkling of what it is like. Like when we say Chakim v'lei b'chachmi yediyah, you can't say God has no wisdom, but it's not a wisdom that's anything similar to our wisdom. So that negating is a yediyah sashlila or Hasaga sashlila. And Alter Rebbe explains in the Kudei that he cited earlier on the top of page 1395 that with enough shlilas, when you negate enough, you can start getting a picture of what something is like, not quite like seeing it or understanding it, but it's still not completely faith. There is a hasaga here. So when I mentioned the other day, scientists, there's empirical observation where you literally can prove it by seeing it. There's understanding it without fully seeing it, but you could theorize and use your mind of speculating. And then there's negating. You can't see it directly, but you can negate. I mean, an example I give often for this is when you talk about consciousness and superconsciousness. Here's an example. Nobody's ever seen superconsciousness. And yet there are people, I'm not saying everybody, there are many therapists and psychologists that are not really necessarily good, but there are those that have a sense. Now, it's not that they can see the superconscious, but they're able to explore it somewhat. Now, how do you do that? If there's something you can't see, and I say see, I don't just mean with your eyes. You can't hear it, you can't taste it, you can't touch it. There's no X-ray. Even though you can take an MRI and an X-ray and other scans to see things that are not visible to the naked eye, when it comes to superconscious, even an X-ray is not going to help, or MRI. So what is one of the ways you do it? One of the ways is through a discussion. So just like a doctor, for example, is looking to see, someone says, I have pain in my finger. Okay, so the doctor touches the finger, here feels here, there. As he gets closer to something that's hurting, the person cries out, it's hurting. What is the doctor knowing from that? That must be the area where there's either a pinched nerve or an injury or some other form of something. So the same thing is psychologically. You speak to someone and you start talking about, let's say, they say their life isn't working out so well. My marriage isn't doing well. I'm having issues with my children, myself, I'm depressed. So you start exploring the usual suspects, family, children. As a child, what was your childhood like? And I'm just giving it's not really imaginary. I've done it many times. Say, so what's your relationship with your mother? I don't want to talk about my mother. So right away, of course, you have to be sensitive. You never come with an assault on someone's psyche, but that tells you something. Where there's smoke, there's fire. So if the conversation ultimately develops into a trusting relationship, at some point, why don't you want to speak about your mother? It's a complicated relationship. But the closer it is to the root of the issue, it's going to be uncomfortable, just like when you touch a nerve. You get closer to something. Now, you don't see the mother. You're not also there when that person was a child. We're talking about past history. It could be 30 years ago. It could be 20 years ago. But by exploring what you do know, you can start getting a picture in a way, in an indirect way, of what was this childhood like? What was your home like? My home, every night, was always yelling and screaming. I always felt insecure. My father would come home drunk, etc. I'm just throwing out examples, strong examples, just to make the point. So the example I would give for it is this. Imagine having an imaginary wall, a wall that's shrouded in darkness. And you don't know, have no idea what that wall looks like. Is it a flat wall? Is it a curved wall? Does it have edges, indentations, etc.? Now, you can't shine a light on it, and you can't touch it. So is there any way you figure out how what that wall looks like? So the answer is yes. Bounce a ball. Take a rubber ball and start bouncing it on the wall. And you see how it bounces back. If it bounces back in a straight line, you know it's even area. You keep bouncing the ball through the whole wall, you'll start seeing if it bounces back to the right, you know there's a left indentation. Somewhat like sonar. What does sonar do? When you send over these sound waves under the water, so it picks up, it can pick up a submarine, it can pick up objects. Not by seeing the object, but bouncing off of it. So it's indirect. It's an example of asagas hashlila. You're not seeing it directly, you're seeing it by the rebound. But in the rebound, you could ultimately get a picture of something, not literally as if you saw it and touched it, but pretty close. Because you're doing it through shlila. It's just an example. It's not a perfect example. So please don't rip it apart, because I'm sure it has plenty of things that are not exactly like this. But it's just an example how you can sometimes perceive something without direct access. So is this the total hasagas hashlila he's talking about here? Here we could be talking even higher than that. Ahidah. But he is saying it's hasagas hashlila. He's saying it is in the realm of a type of negating. So you could say, for example, God is wise. God has bina, is understanding. God is das. God has chesed. But someone will say, is God defined by chachma, bina, das, chesed, gur, teferes, netzach, chayd, yesed, machas? No. He has these qualities because he created them. So how do you define God? You'll say, well, God is wise, but not like wisdom as we know it. He's bina, but not like bina as we know it. So first you begin through Atzilus in the conscious level. This is hasagas hachiyuv. You say, okay, I know what wisdom is because I was born with wisdom. I have chachma bina das in my faculties. Like we learned before, nishtal mehen, our faculties from the soul, mipsari achzalaka, from my flesh I behold God. I can look at my faculties and I can understand. Okay, so if I have wisdom, God for sure has wisdom. It's greater wisdom than I. Then you come to another stage of saying, 1 second, God's wisdom is not just greater than mine, it's different than mine. And to the point you say he's wise, but not like our wisdom. To the point that he's wise, but a completely different area, completely different realm. It's not even nothing in common. So what you're doing is you're beginning with the similarities, and through that you slowly come to understand and extrapolate the things that are different and understand godliness higher and higher, first as he relates to us, and then ultimately how he's removed from us, Kaddish and Muvdal. So what he's saying is the Seraphim do have hasaga higher than other angels, the lower angels. Hasaga, but it's hasaga shashlil. They're already at a stage where they're able to negate. So that's how he reconciles. So on one hand, it's Heidah, Kodesh, Umuvdal. But there is some Hasaga, like he says elsewhere, Hagam, that he explains elsewhere, there is Hasaga. So he's explaining it's Hasaga Sashlila.
From where he derives this?
One second. Using the same words you said for. In general, it's hashoras haseichel. It means it's not direct understanding, it's surmising. It's hashara would be estimating, surmising, extrapolating. All those words would really fit here well. So that's how he explains Srafim. Go ahead. Would you want to ask something?
Yeah, I asked from where he derives this.
From where does who derive what?
From where does the Rebbe Rashab derive this insight?
Where does he derive any insight? What do you mean? I mean, all this that we've been learning.
Okay,
not clear what you're asking.
I'm in shul. I can't explain my question. I'll ask later.
Okay.
They're davening.
Okay, it's fine. Okay. So now that we understand what the Srafim have veded, the Srafim who b'chinas halal mamata l'mayla, and that's why the Aveda of Srafim is an Aveda that elevates from the bottom up. Lies shazel b'chinas edein sof shalamayla ma'asaga. Because the Srafim are not bracha. They're not drawing down the energy. They're elevating. They're going upward to experience and to somewhat perceive these higher levels. That's higher than regular comprehension. That's why it's in a state of elevating upward. The elevation and the scholars being encompassed in. The Srafim are burning with passion to be encompassed in Erein Sof Baruch Hu. If their focus was understanding it on our terms, chiyuv, like asagas chiyuv, then it's internalizing, then it's drawing it down. The Srafim, their aved is halom umata l'mayla. To reach to this level of kodesh and moved on, that's removed. That's the Srafim. Avachayis HaKodesh, the Srafim are accessing and relating to Keser, which is Kodesh, and therefore being elevated to that state, being encompassed in that higher state. Like you said, a bitl mitziyuseh. It's about a bitl that they're experiencing. Avachayis HaKodesh, the next level, Chayis HaKodesh in Yitzira, which are the holy creatures or holy light energy. Eimrim Baruch, they say Baruch. Shazel b'chokhmah. That's the level of, that's within chokhmah, like we said. Baruch is chokhmah. Shazel k'moshe kosev b'priyetz chaim, shar yud, perek daled. Like he writes in Priyetz Chaim, the 10th gate, chapter 4. The Gimel, Pomim Kodesh, that we say Kodesh, 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 hein b'tlas reishin. Those refer to the tlas reishin, which is Keser. Well, translation is usually the three higher levels in Keser. The Keser Chochma Bina within Keser. Ubaruch b'Chochma. So the translation, we learned about the three heads. The three heads in Keser, they're the three highest levels. But Chochma is already the first of the revealed spheres. And that's Baruch. B'Sham, in Priyetz Chaim, he says, Shezeh b'Kedusha the Amida. There he's explaining it not in Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh that we say before Shema. We also say Kodesh, Kodesh twice in morning davening. In Shema, and then before Shema, Brichas Krishma, before Shema, before Avos, and then in Shemoneh Esrei, when we say Kedusha. So he says the Priyetz Chaim is talking about this in Ba'amida, in the davening of Amida. Why he's mentioning that? It could be he's hinting to what we said before, that Yehuda is Shemoneh Esrei, which is the level of Kodesh, that is that is even higher than the Kaddish, I guess, before Krishma. He doesn't say it explicitly, but he's saying there's still in Kedusha Damida that Kaddish is the levels of Keser, and Baruch is the level of Chachma. So even though it's in Shemoneh Esrei, I guess in Shemoneh Esrei also you could have a level of within Haidah. You also have, we said before, Haidah and Asaga within from Haidah. However you explain that. But he doesn't really give details. He just says that in the parentheses. Bahainu. And this means this level of the Chayes HaSeichel B'chlal. This is already now the Chayes HaKodesh and Yetzirah are the Seichel B'chlal. That's in general intelligence. Shezeh B'chinas Gilui. That's a level of revelation, because when you understand something, the idea is being revealed. For the Seraphim, it's the opposite. It's concealed, and they're lifting themselves up and elevating to that higher state. Kaddish. Something that's revealed, that's where it's applicable to say bracha, blessing. Because bracha is a transmission and a revelation. The ima yois, and even though the b'chinas kaddish, that the level of kaddish, hu l'mayla b'chinas baruch, as we've learned, kaddish is higher than baruch. It's sevav kalam. B'kol mokem yesh mayla b'chinas baruch shehu b'chinas gili. Now he's concluding what he started the whole thing with Bria Yetzirah. Nevertheless, there's a quality in baruch because it's revealed. And that's also the quality that we've been learning about Yetzirah compared to Bria. That though Bria is higher, and we learned before it's Igulin, Makif, but it's Nefesh, not Ruach. Because Gilui has a quality that it reveals it in actuality. And here the focus is on revelation, even though these levels are higher, but Baruch is the level of Gilui, and that's the focus here. So sometimes my Morim of Chassidus will focus on the higher level. Now it's focused on the more revealed and more integrated level. And this brings us back all the way before the Aveda. That's when he spoke about how the Maila of Chochmah over Keser. And Bria is Cheshach v'Helam, Yetzirah is Bria Chinas HaChochmah Reishis HaGilui. Yeah, this takes us back all the way, page 1390, and even earlier. Started from 1388, but especially 1390, where he spoke at length about the mile of Gilui over Helam, of Yetzirah over Baruch over Kodesh, and Mamal over Seviv, and basically Bracha over Haidah. Yeah. So you need both, but here that's the focus. So this brings us back to what he began with Mishnah and Gemara, that Gemara, Talmud, is discovering within the darkness clarity. Mishnah is initial clarity, because it shines with the clarity of Chachmei Law, of Atzilus, that came all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu, all the way to Rabbeinu HaKodesh, and then Rav and Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan, the clarity. Gemara is going from the bottom up. You have to find clarity in darkness. So it does reach a deeper level of Ayin, but it's still a state of Baruch Cheshach in Bria. And Mishnah is initially a Gilui, which really explains why Mishnah, at the end of the day, is higher than Gemara, even though it's Yetzirah, but it's the mile of Gilui. And at the end of the day, even though you have Gemara, you still want Mishnah, because you want Mishnah, you want also the revelation of the clarity that Moshe Rabbeinu had when he received the Torah. You also want that clarity also in a state of darkness, which is what the Talmud does. So you really want both. But Gili has that mila because it brings it out in a place that we can relate to it. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I wanted to apologize for before. What my question was from the Rebbe Rashab, what was the source of the Tzrafim being a Kadosh? But the answer is they're the ones who say Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. And we did learn this, but I forgot. So I apologize. But that was the nature of my question.
Yeah, the Tzrafim say Kadosh and the Chayas say Baruch, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that before.
Any questions? Okay. So the next section, which is going to be almost 3 pages, is continuing back to the theme that Gilui is higher than Helam. That Yitzira has a quality over Bria. Even though Bria is a higher level, but the quality of revelation, that it doesn't remain in a raw and amorphous form, is the mile of Yitzira. So he's going to continue now this theme. He's going to bring it back to what we discussed about the Kav, the Shimu, the Kav. And this is going to go till close to the bottom of 1398. So we have around 2-3 pages more. And then he's going to go back to the third example of Makabel of vision. After explaining the luminous stone following the light of the moon, which was the comparison to Bria and Yetzirah, he's going to go to the vision of the eye. But right now, there's going to be more explanation about Helam and Gilui, Bria and Yetzirah. So that's what we're going to be learning now. V'hinei, find the new paragraph. V'hinei be'etz chaim shara klolim perek ches. So Rebbe Shab is continuing with a real outpouring of sources that he's been doing over the last few pages, especially back. Yeah, all these pre-Eitz Chaims and Eitz Chaims that we've been doing the last few pages, right? So now another Eitz Chaim. Shara Klolim Perich Ches. Isa, what is he saying pre-Eitz Chaim, in Eitz Chaim? The Ad HaChazei, Chazei is the torso.
The chest,
right?
isn't it?
The chest. Yeah, up to the chest. So remember, let's just, before I read, remember in Kabbalah, everything is very, uses physical terms, body-like terms, and you have to always abstract. The Baal Shem Tov makes a big point that when you learn Kabbalah, you have to make sure lahafshit megash miyusam. You have to abstract it from its physical form. The reason that Kabbalah does it, because the human being was created in the divine image, including the body. So we talk about eyes, ears, sounds, everything we talked about. So in the human body, it's physical. But in the spiritual world, it's not physical. But yet, Kabbalah talks that language. So you just have to keep that in mind all the time. And we talk about the different stages. So we have an example from the human body that from there we can understand how it is on a spiritual level. So chazeh, which is the chest, is a level in, just like there's a level of the lev, the heart, and the moyach, and all the other parts of the human body. So ada chazeh, it says, hachsodim uchusim b'yesod ima. So chsodim are the emotions. So if Chabad resides in the mind, the emotions reside in the heart, in that whole area. But emotions themselves have higher levels of emotions, and there's lower level of emotions. There's the emotions as they are more on an emotional level than they're on a behavioral level. Like when we say chesed, gvura, teferes, it's more the emotional level. Netzach, you say there's more the behavioral, functional side of the emotions. So he says, till the chest, the chsadim are mechusim, the chsadim are concealed, be yesod ima, in the bonding element of ima and bina. Now we learned some of this earlier when we learned about mutfa, murgish, muskel, the mother and her children. So bina is chachma, bina is the mother that hovers over her, ke'im harivetzes ala frechim, over her chicks. That's the mother. That's bina protecting her young. In Avodas Hashem, it's bina protecting the midas, cultivating and nurturing the midas, that the midas shouldn't just be immature and childlike, but the mother develops them and protects and nurtures them. We learned this earlier, until the point where shalach the shalach is aim, that the very midas send the mother away. We no longer need you to nurture us. We've grown to be independent, and Bina can go back to Chachma, to Abba, and together gaze at Arich and Atik, and the midas also get elevated with that. You may recall this discussion. But we're talking now is, he's saying, so Ada Chazeh, till the chest, which means till a certain level of Atzilus, the Chsadim are concealed in Yeseidim, Shezel Kamei Mosach al Chsadim. So the Mechusim, they're concealed. So it's a form of, like he says in Eitz Chaim, like a form of a curtain. We talked about a parsa is a curtain, a partition. Mosach is another form of a curtain. So there are curtains and partitions throughout, as we know, the whole Seder Shtalshlus. So he says, this level of the chazay, the chest, is a form of a curtain. Alach sodim, concealed. Va'achar kach, and then below that, and after that, mizgalim. The chsadim become revealed. So we have chsadim mechusim and chsadim geluyim. Concealed kindness, levels of chesed, and revealed states. And the Eitz Chaim continues and says, V'zeu shekosav yetzer eir u'boyre cheshach. And these two levels is the yetzer eir is the gilui, yitzira, where it gets revealed. U'boyre cheshach is still the state of cheshach mechusim. Yetzer eir gilui, yetzer eir is revealed. U'boyre cheshach, and the creation of darkness, liyosei mosach, being that it's like a curtain that conceals. Okay, so now the Rebbe Rashab is broadening the discussion. And remember, I said that besides grounding it, he's also broadening it to more topics. And now he's showing how Briya Yetzira is used by the Eitz Chaim to explain the two levels of Chsadim. Ubashad Drusha Atzel and Pedig Beis, another section in Eitz Chaim. This time it's called Shar Drusha Atzelim. Shar Klolim is in the beginning of Eitz Chaim. It's the Klolim are like the rules, the axioms, the principles. Shar Drusha Atzelim, chapter 2, Isa. There he writes like this: the Beis Chsadim Harishenim. It's going to be a little Kabbalistic. I'll explain it. I'll go slowly, but bear with me. So there are, just one second. So the Beis Chsadim Harishenim, so in Chesed, we're talking the Chsadim have more than one Chesed. Usually there's Hei Chsadim, like there's Hei Gvuras. In Chesed itself, we talk about 5 levels of Chesed. But there are 5 levels in a hierarchy. So it says the first 2, Hashlish Elyon, the Chesed, the Tiferes, the top third of Chesed of Tiferes, Heim Stumim, Teich Yesed Ima. So he's bringing a similar idea, but in a little more detail. So let me just slow down and explain like this. I'm going to use a little more, make it a little more explanatory. It's always important. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. 1 minute. Okay. It's always important to qualify this. This is something I struggled with years ago until I finally figured it out. I was always bothered whenever you talk about emotions. You know, we identify with emotions like our emotions. You know, I feel love, I feel attraction, I feel repulsion, I feel fear. We have a bunch of emotions. And when you apply that to the idea of emotions above, it gets confusing. Because above, it doesn't sound like it's impulsive emotions. The Eibster doesn't have impulses. As in, when I say impulsive, like reflexive. So how do emotions work above? And until it's not spelled out, it remains a confusing element. Until you come and learn and discover like this, that emotions, there are two types of emotions. There's our natural emotions. When a baby in a crib, a newborn is crying for food, that's reflexive emotions the way human beings were created. When we feel joy or pain or happiness or love or compassion, those are the natural emotions that we're born with. But then there are emotions that we give birth to, which means through a contemplation, where the mind contemplates on something and it gives birth to emotions, like you learn in Tanya in many places, the Heilodas Hamidus. That's a very different level. When we talk about emotions above, these are instruments that God created that said, first I will manifest godliness through intellectual faculties, which is more removed. This is God in the Torah, for example, God's wisdom, which is through the faculties of the cognitive faculties. Then I will manifest in emotional faculties, which is a relationship. Chesed, Eilam Yechesed Yibona. That the world is created with kindness, how I show kindness, how I will express myself in a relationship with another. And that's the midas that relates now to existence. That will evolve in our lives as cognitive emotional, but the main focus here is the cognitive that gives birth to the emotional, not the emotional that we're born with that are just reflexive. So we talk about midas sheneildim min haseichel. Because you could say, what do you mean? I don't need bina or chachma to have emotions. You wake up in the morning and you have a feeling. It's not like you contemplate, you just feel something. Or you walk in the street and you're suddenly attracted to something. It doesn't have to have any contemplation at all. Yes, it helps. Sometimes you understand something, so it makes you more attracted to it. But midas don't seem to be dependent on intellect. As a matter of fact, you could also say midas actually can disturb them. Your mind can tell you one thing, but your feelings feel something else. And you'll follow your emotions and you won't do what your mind tells you. You'll make a mistake. This happens all the time. Compulsive behavior, or we're seduced by something, we're tempted by something. Your mind tells you it's wrong, and your emotions say, no, I want to do it. But then there are emotions that are guided by, and more importantly, are born through mind. In that process, like we learned earlier in volume 3, Mutva Murgish Muskel, yes, an immature child just has reflexes, behavioral reflexes. But then you want to train the child and say, listen, you don't grab everything you want. You have to say, please. You have to share. What are you doing? You're taking the child. You have to be able to have a relationship with someone else. It's not just your own selfish needs. You're training the emotions. The mind is training the emotions to be disciplined, to be refined, to be more sublime. And all the levels we learned of how far you can go with that. That the emotions should ultimately even be drawn to things beyond self-interest, all the way to God. To godliness, that you should actually love. So in that process, when emotions are so-called being born from and guided by Chachma and Bina, or in this case, Bina, there are levels. First, the mides are nistarim. You don't see them yet. The mind is contemplating on something and is beginning to have midei shebeseichel, we learned. It's called cognitive emotions. Like your mind gets excited about something, but it's not yet mean I want it. It means my mind appreciates it. There are many times you can appreciate something with your mind, but you don't yet feel that it's something you want to actually include in your life. I mean, you've seen this many times. I've mentioned an example. For example, someone says to their friend, I met a woman, she'd really be a perfect shidduch for you. She's excellent. And he dates her, and it doesn't really work out. Then the guy realizes, 1 second, if she's so excellent, maybe she's also good for me. Sometimes we don't do that. We just say it's good, but not necessarily good for me. So there's emotions as they are in the mind. And then there's the emotions, they're beginning to emerge, but they're still in a concealed state. Because like we discussed with Chaimet Surah Tikkun, nothing just happens overnight. emotions, as they give birth, have to hatch, so to speak. So from chsadim, nistarim, they become chsadim mugulim. So what is, because now he's talking about Bria and Yetzirah, so he's talking about how from Bria, which is more moichin, remember, Bina mekanina bekursaya. It's Bina, and Bina is a concealed state, me, if you recall. Yetzirah is midas, and midas is more revealed. Mishnah is a revealed state. And as such, he's discussing how these emotions are going from a concealed mechusim to megulim in the context of Bria and Yetzirah that he wants to explain here. But to do so, he's first quoting pure Kabbalistic sources without much explanation. That's why I felt I should give a little background. So he's speaking about these two stages, that till the chest, it's concealed, and then that which is Beirach Cheshach, and there's a curtain, so it's concealed behind the curtain, and then it becomes revealed. In the second Eitz Chaim, he's explaining it further, that there's the first two chsadim, the base chsadim Hashem, Hashlish Elyon, the Chesed, the Tiferes, which is the top third. So if you divide it into three parts, you have the top third, the second third, and the third third, three parts. So Shlish Elyon, the Chesed, the Tiferes. For some reason, it's Chesed of Tiferes. Probably, I have to look up why. Maybe it's Chesed Gvura and Tiferes of Tiferes. I'm not sure. Heim Stumim, they are concealed, like he said, covered up Teich Yuseidima. Like he said before, Yuseidima. Within the bonding of Ima, because Bina, how does Bina nurture the Midas? So you say the lower level of Bina is Yesod is Iskashus. It's the part of Bina that is already associating with and giving birth to the Midas. For example, Bina Sheba Bina, or Chachma Sheba Bina, or Chesed Sheba Bina are higher states than Bina. Yesod is already the transmission from Bina into Midas. So it's Yesod Bina is the level where these Midas are Stumim, which Midas the higher level of the Chsadim, which now is called also the top third of Chesed of Tiferes. These are the technical levels. Let me continue reading, and then I think we'll understand it better. Ubeis Chsadim Tachtenim, and the two lower levels of Chesed, Ubeis Shlishi HaChesed Hagimel, and the two thirds, the two bottom thirds of the Chesed, of the third Chesed Shepet Tiferes, Hey Megulim. That's revealed. I'm not clear about the thirds. That's a little, I have to think about that more. I understand the higher chsadim are hidden, the lower chsadim are revealed, but he's adding also Hashlish Elyon the Chesed to Tiferes, the top third of Chesed of Tiferes, or Beis Shlishi HaChesed HaGimel Shebet Tiferes, and the two other thirds of the third Chesed in Tiferes. They are revealed. He's talking about two levels of chsadim here, the top two and the bottom two. The top third of Tiferes, of Chesed of Tiferes, and the two bottom thirds of the third Chesed in Tiferes. I want to look it up there to see exactly what it means, so I'll get back to you on that. L'chei mekabel zah harasan megula. And the Eitz Chaim continues, that's why zah, which is already the midas themselves, not the way they're in Yesod Ima. That's why Zah's Mekabel, it's reflection in a revealed way, because it's coming from the lower levels. U'kameishahu b'zah, and the way it is in Zah, in the Midas, Kainhu b'briya v'yitzira. So too is it in Briya and Yitzira, K'meishakosav b'shar haklolim sham, quoting again the first Eitz Chaim. So in other words, the way it is in Atzilus, the way the process from Bina to the hidden Chsadim, to the revealed Chsadim, into Zah, then that will manifest when it goes into Briya and Yetzirah, because Briya, remember, is like Bina, Yetzirah is like Zah, Zah Mekana Yetzirah. The Bebriya Chsadim em Chusim, in Briya the Chsadim are concealed, B'chinas Mosach, in a state of like a curtain, will be Yetzirah Chsadim em B'chinas Gili. And Yetzirah, the Chsadim, come in a form of revelation, revealed. Now he's going to continue and say, so even though the hidden ones are higher level, but based on this Eitz Chaim, the revealed ones have a quality that the hidden ones don't have. So I have to get back to describe what exactly is the top third and the bottom thirds. That I wasn't very clear about. I do understand the two levels of Chsadim, which reflect Bria and Yetzirah, but we have to still talk about what those thirds are. Even though it's not the Havana, the understanding of what he says here is clear, but since he is quoting it, it's good to know what they refer to. But these are real. This is real pure Kabbalah that is always going to be somewhat cryptic until you dissect it and break it down. Now the next piece.
Maybe
the next piece. One second. The next piece, he's going to say exactly what he's been saying till now. I'm going to read it quickly. V'yadua, the chesed gvura hamachusim hem lamayla mebchinas chesed gvura hamagulim. The concealed chesed and gvura are higher than the revealed ones, obviously. The chesed gvura hamachusim hem b'chinas eitz hachayim. The hidden chesed gvura is the tree of life. V'hamagulim mebchinas eitz hadas. And the revealed ones is already Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge. U'makol mokim. And nevertheless, the fact that Zohar receives the revealed chsadim from Yesod Ima, which is concealed in Yesod Ima, in the Yesod of Bina, Hu Yisra Maila, it has a quality, a virtue over the concealed level. And so too, Bebriya v'Yitzira, in the worlds of Briya Yitzira, the Bebriya, Heim B'chinas chsadim u'chusim, in Briya they're concealed chsadim, kindness. Even though they're higher in level than the revealed ones, in Bria they're covered up in the curtain. That's not a quality. That's not an advantage. And they are revealed chesed and gvura. They're lower in level. Nevertheless, the quality in them is that they're revealed. Well, I'm going to stop here, and then comes the Biur Ayin. He's going to explain Eitz HaChaim and Eitz Hadas in this context. So one is definitely a higher level, but it's not a quality when it's concealed. And the other one is a lower level, but it's revealed. Going back to the central theme of Bria and Yetzirah, these two levels. I'm going to stop here, but I'll stop for questions.
That's what you said before, that you try to understand. Possible, he's talking here about the chesed of Tiferes. And chesed of Tiferes is having three halakim. The first two are chasodim or rishonim, ashlish or elyo in the chesed of Tiferes, heim stumim. Then you have the second chasodim are tachtoinim, and then you have the third shlishei hachesed, they are shisho, and they are megulim. Because they are shisho, and in Tiferes they are shisho, so these shisho are divided. The first two are mechusim, then the second two are the tachtoinim, and then you have the third one, they are megulim.
But the base chsad v'tachtenim are also megulim, right?
Yeah, because they are divided in three. The shlisho elyon, because they are shisho, and then you have the second two, and then you have the third two.
So he's talking about the shisha chsadim, not the 5 chsadim. I mentioned 5. I thought that's what he was referring to. It's possible what you're saying is correct. I want to look it up, but it's possible that you're saying the first 2 of the 6, which is the first third. 3, 2. The first third of Chesed Tiferes are concealed. Okay, the second 2 Tachtenim, the Beis Shlishi HaChesed HaGimel, and the 2/3 of the third one, Shabbat Tiferes. But what means Shlishi? What means Chesed HaGimel? What's Chesed HaBeis? The Beis Chasodim Tachtenim.
Beis Chasodim Tachtenim are the second 2, and then the third 2 they are megulim.
So 246 is what you're saying. Let me see if it fits here. Shlish elin chesed teferes. Beis shalom tachtein would be the next one. Beis shlishi hachesed hagimel.
Beis shlishi of the chesed shebetiferes. Hachesed hagimel shebetiferes.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's very possible that's pshat, and thank you. So basically, there's three sets of two. The first two are concealed. That's the first third of chesed of teferes. The second two, the bottom four, basically, the second third. And the third third are essentially revealed. Fine. Good. And that corresponds to Bria Yitzirus. So Bria is concealed, Yitzirus revealed, and the quality of revelation over concealment. It's very clear that the Rebbe Rashab is making a very strong case here, because this is going back now, I'm talking about a good 6 pages of establishing the case that Gili has a mile over Helam, even though the Helam is a higher level. He said it clearly. Tachlis hakavonu b'chinas hagili, ikar hakavonu is Gili. He said it several times. That's the central theme that you have to keep in mind. Okay, are there any questions? Okay. So we'll continue tomorrow from Vihine. We'll be at the Inyan rather. We'll be at the Inyan. So we're stopping now around 2/3 down, page 1390.